All right, so today I wanted to do a bit of a live stream here talking about why I prefer to run games as opposed to playing games, and why that will most likely be the case for the foreseeable future. And I'm curious whether you watch this live or if you end up watching it after it's been posted. I'd love to hear your response to this, whether this is something that you face or just any of your thoughts really on this topic. But the main reason that I really run games much more than I play games is for timing. It's control of the time. You know, I have a full-time job. I have two kids, one who's 5 and one who's almost 2. So I have extremely busy life, and I don't typically have the time to necessarily jump into a game whenever one's available, right? I have a window in which I can game, and that window is not conducive right now to playing a live group. So I play online, which is great. But it's difficult for me to, say, start a game at 9 p.m. Eastern that might run till midnight or 1 o'clock, to then have to get up at 5:30 the next morning when my kids wake up and be up all day. You know, that's tricky. It's especially tricky when maybe it's a group that I love playing with, but it's a system that I don't really want to play, right? Or a genre that I'm just, it's okay, but it's not something that I'm super excited about, right? And sometimes it's literally the quality of the game that's available or the type of game that's available when I can play. And, that can be a big reason as well. Jeff, I think I just saw you respond here. Yeah, there we go. You just caught this, and timing is also one of the main reasons I like running versus playing. Yeah, well, and I think that that's a huge reason for a lot of people and why they run games. Because I've talked to people before who have said, really, I would much prefer to play because, I find more enjoyment in that, but I DM because either nobody else will do it or, because the timing, is a factor, right? But what I've been finding over the past really year or so is that I found a group of people in the Absolute Tabletop community that I love playing with. I enjoy playing that, with this group. And, it's tricky because scheduling can be difficult, right? And I try to make it a priority to play with them when I can, because I do find enjoyment in that. But what I found kind of just generally, excuse me, not with this group, but just generally over the years is that, over the past 2 years anyway, is that, sorry, the sun's bad there, that, D&D 5th edition is the dominant system that seems most people are playing. And that's great because they have a lot of fun with that. And it is a great system to bring people into the hobby. It's a great flexible system that allows people to tell all kinds of fun stories. And I had a hell of a fun time playing it with, with some of the people in the group. And I ran a bunch of it back when I first got back into the hobby. But it's just not a system that I want to play anymore. And I've explained the reasons for that in various live streams on social media. I think I've done a video on that here as well, but it's a good system, but it's just not for me. It's not the one that I want to play anymore. And because of that, that can be a little bit tricky sometimes to find players that want to play other systems consistently in my time zone, or not play, but who will run other systems consistently in my timing window, right? So if I want to play Fate, I want to play Savage Worlds, I want to play Basic Fantasy, I want to play Star Wars, whatever it might be, Dungeon World, those games are not necessarily running when I can play them. But generally, if I put up a game in one of those systems, put out a post saying, hey, who wants to play at this time, usually I will get enough people to fill a game. So that's the main reason that I do that, because if, let's say I wanted to run Dungeon World, and on a Sunday night from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern time, right? People might have, or let's say it was Friday night, because Friday night, Saturday night are fairly common, right? Times, the people that I may want to play with might already be in other games, or they may have a 5th edition game that they've got going on, or they may have family stuff going on, whatever. So, but traditionally they're already jumping into those 5e games, and I've seen those games pop up, and I've seen the interest posts, and I generally don't get involved with them. So that's the main reason. But another reason that I DM primarily instead of play is because I tend to have a more enjoyable experience for myself when I'm running a game than when I'm playing a game. With a few exceptions. Again, the group that I found in AbTab that I enjoy playing with, I always have a good time, regardless of the system, playing with them. So whether they're running 5e or not, I will continue to try to get into those games, because I do enjoy that. But I tend to like to direct the story a little bit. Not necessarily control the story, and not necessarily force people to go in the direction that I want them to go in, but I tend to look at games and gaming sessions almost from a top-down sort of movie director viewpoint, if that makes any sense. And so I'm sort of looking at it from, okay, this cinematic section, what makes sense in terms of like the scene and the story structure, and how this, what would be a cool thing in this scene. And as a player, sometimes I fear that I will dominate the scene, because I have this idea and I really want to run with it. And I like to involve the other players in that as well. But sometimes, obviously another player might have the same ideas. They might be like, hey, I got this really cool idea for a scene, and I might not be able to play it out that way, right? So I'm afraid, partly as a player, that I will dominate the amount of time that, the spotlight time, so to speak, right? And that's one thing that I hesitate a little bit with when gaming. And I don't know if that's the case or not. I certainly try to shine the spotlight on others when I can, and try to set up my own actions to allow another character to do something cool, or do something cinematic, or really emotional, or whatever. I would say with varying degrees of success. But as a GM, it's okay for me to exercise a little bit more control over the scene. And again, I don't want to totally dominate it, because my GM philosophy is really try to let the players direct as much of the story as they can, because that's surprising to me, right? That makes me another player at the table. And sometimes I'll give them more influence over the story. I might give them more narrative control than maybe others would. And I did a post about that the other day, and there were varying opinions on that. Some people enjoy allowing the players to have that narrative control, others don't. But I come from a story game background. At least I started out with Vampire the Masquerade, and then when I came back into the hobby, I quickly gravitated towards more story games like Fate, Numenera, Star Wars, etc. So, powered by the Apocalypse, versus the sort of more traditionally designed games. And so that's another reason that I primarily GM, is that I can exert that influence over the story just enough to where I think it satisfies the story that I'm trying to tell, and hopefully gives the players the enjoyment and the satisfaction of having a really fun time within that story and helping to influence and shape that story. And then, you know, the last part, and it's one that I kind of hinted at, is that it allows me to run the systems that I want to run, you know. Again, you know, if I have a very limited gaming window and all the games that are popping up in that window are systems that I don't want to play, what do? You know, I don't have much recourse. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who generally likes to say, hey, will somebody run this type of game for me? I've done it once or twice. I got really fortunate, actually. I did that one time in, I think it was the Tides of Change group, and John from Red Dice Diaries graciously agreed to run a Star Wars Edge of the Empire game, which was my very first experience with that system, and has subsequently launched me into that now being my favorite system. So it can work, but I'm generally uncomfortable with doing that. I'm very much of the school that if you want a game and nobody else is running it, then run it yourself. That's what I try to do. So anyway, I think I'm going to finish this video here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and happy gaming.